I've been given the opportunity to say a few things as we prepare now for the service of commissioning of our deaconesses, with whom we rejoice, and I know you'll rejoice with me. Recently, I was asked a question about where did I want to go with this annual conference for the next 4 years. And it was a kind of an awkward question because while it was my desire to be here and Cynthia's desire to be here in West Ohio beyond August 31 of 2020, a lot of things that we are used to and that you're used to in the transition of Episcopal leadership didn't take place. Let me be specific: the General Conference, the Jurisdictional Conference. And so it was a little bit discombobulating because I did not want to make presumptions, even though we had requested to stay if we didn't retire. And the Committee on Episcopacy had made a counterpart request that we would be returned if we did not retire. So it's kind of crazy. We're here and nobody voted on it. We're just here. And it's nobody's fault. There are no bad people. There are these lemon kind of circumstances that you heard Mitchell Harper talking about. So here's what I want you to know. We are glad beyond measure to be here. We don't assume that we are entitled to be here or in any annual conference of the United Methodist Church. Any conference I've had, you've heard this before, any local church that I've served has been more conference and more local church than I, if left to my own devices, am worthy of. And so the first word is thank you and gratitude. And even if we seem just sort of plopped down in the middle of you because nobody's moving us along or voting to say, please stay, we're here. That said, with great joy and tongue in cheek, I want to say to you that if I'm going to be here, I intend to get some things done. And I want to get a few things done, and that would be the case if I weren't retiring, if I was in active Episcopal leadership. I hope it will be till 2024, but I want to make a note because I'm an itinerant elder in the church. And the Jurisdictional Conference can do what it wishes next November when they meet. I don't have that expectation. I'm not making that request. Just kind of let me ride it out. But I don't want to coast for 4 years. God and the world God loves so much that God gave God's Son deserves more than any preacher coasting, let alone a bishop coasting, and may I say, to give equal time, any baptized Christian coasting. Have I got any witnesses? Yeah. We're not here to dream and drift. We have work to do, the poet said, and loads to lift. Shun not the struggle, 'tis God's gift. And so I want to give you an image that a friend of mine who did retire last quadrennium said, when I said, well, man, how you feeling about retirement as you move into your last quadrennium? And he said to me, Greg, I don't intend to run to the tape. This is a track and field event. He said, I intend to run through the tape. And so I want to say to you, I intend, Cynthia intends, the team I'm working with now, we intend, whatever the changes will be, to run through the tape until our season is up. In specific response to some things that I want you to keep in mind as we move forward. We are not waiting on change. Change is already here. It was here before COVID was acknowledged, before we knew how to spell it, before we knew it was among any number of coronaviruses. It was here before the heinous murder of George Floyd. Change is upon the church, and it is upon the society, and it is upon the societies of the world. The question is for us, who will we be in the midst of the change? And how will we serve? There's no point sitting around anymore saying, if change comes. I want to say, are you serious? The hymn writer said, change and decay all around I see. And then the poet went on to say, O thou who changest not, thou who changest not, abide with me. That's what I tried to say feebly this morning. But the change is here. The newness is coming. And it's not all easy. If I was to borrow an image from Paul, we are in the birth pangs of a new creation. We are different now as the church, and I want to say contextually today in the American society, than we were a year ago this time, dramatically, and not everybody's happy about it. I mean, who would have dreamed up COVID-19? You know, who would have dreamed up the almost weekly killing of some populations by others? But the change is here. The list goes on. Our church has been in a period of, you can call it discernment, you can call it chaos, you can call it anything you want. But we're in the middle of something, and I'm choosing to call it change. The question is, will we serve our God and our neighbor in complete and absolute confidence that God is also in our midst? Now, I did not say God cooked up all of this change, but anything that is changing us to be more like God wants us to be, let me pick up Paul again in Philippians, more like those who literally and symbolically have the mind of Christ. God is in the middle of that. So I'm not going to say who struck John and who caused what. It's here. And the question, the identity question is, who do we choose to be? I got a suggestion. That won't surprise you. Why don't we actually be the church? I mean, let's try to be the church that we've all dreamed about, read about, heard about, aspired to be. In our better moments, every last one of us, and we all have great moments no matter what our most tragic moments are. We have an image and a dream that we really are God's co-missioners in the world. And what if we got off of stuckness about focusing so much on who we have been and leaned in to the change opportunity with the accompaniment of God to be who we could be? And we really were the church. We are a conference that has hovered around 1,000 congregations for a while. It's been a little north of that. It's rapidly moving below that. But it's still, 1,000 is still a good placeholder. I envision into the future that we will become 750 or less robust, cruciform mission stations. And I want to help us get there. There are already churches that are leaving. Some because their life cycle is over. They're just down to a few. They're not mad at anybody. They're not fighting any ideological and theological battles. They're just waiting on a few more folk to take their last breath. And then they're going to say adieu and amen. I'm saying, what if we turned into the realities, whatever the cause and whatever the reasons, to say, what would we look like as a conference, and stop worrying about keeping that number above 1,000 and focused even more than we already have, that every congregation, every Christian community named United Methodist is a mission statement, and that our audience to be pleased is God. The world to be loved is the same world that God loves, that God sent the Son, and that our mission was to join God in the healing and the redemption of this world, friends, I'm here to tell you that that would look like newness to me. That would look like newness to me. What if every one of however many congregations we end up being in a year or 2 or 4 or 10 was no longer debating that there was some theological tension between evangelization and so-called prophetic or social witness? That's not in the book, friends. Not the Bible, not the discipline, not in the Gospels, not in the ministry of Jesus. Those two are always tied together, I believe, from God's angle of view. You cannot serve missionally without an eye toward how many more people can be embraced and choose to embrace God's love for everybody. And you cannot share the gospel that might come out something like, I hope you'll come to know Jesus, and not care about whether or not the folks who are coming to know Jesus or you're asking their consideration have enough food to eat, have safe and clean shelter, have potable water, and based upon anything that is an identifier, race, gender, zip code, education, social status, marital status, doesn't have to worry about whether or not they'll be alive tomorrow. That's what I'm looking for. And it's going to take everything I've got to run through the tape of that to help get the right number of mission stations. I may even stop using the word congregations. I haven't decided yet. Don't hold me to it. Mission stations. We're there for a reason, and we're there not to serve ourselves. The church that is like Jesus is the church that says, I came not to be served, but to serve. And the master said, and to become a ransom for many. That's sort of tricky and antiquated theological language. But what I take from it that I think you can live with is that Jesus understood, and Jesus is trying to help us understand, that the form we are in may not be there forever. And the sooner we accommodate ourselves to becoming more nimble, which is one thing that COVID has helped, though I wouldn't have cooked it up, is to say, if you're going to remain on the battlefield for the Lord, you're going to have to be more nimble, or you're not going to be a church, a mission statement, or nothing at all. 750, give or take. I think that's where we're headed, but I just don't want to lope into it and accept anything. I want them to be robust, cross-shaped communities that are deeply committed, I'm on point number 2, to the salvation of individuals and the redemption of communities and of the nations of this world. And so I've asked, and I've said to our extended cabinet, I want every mission statement, and I want the West Ohio Annual Conference to be resolutely convicted, converted, and convinced that we will raise our voices against the systemic evil that we said we would be against when we were baptized, and the isms that plague us and are eating our lunch and are literally destroying human life. And chief among them, but not solitary, I want us to be a leader in the work of becoming an anti-racist institution. So I'm talking about the whole United Methodist Church. But the place where Palmer has any influence, it may not be as much as I hope I have, it's in West Ohio. And I want to just give you a clue. I'm not going to give you a roadmap today, but let me just give you a clue. Since we've been in the throes of this other virus that has overtaken us, that was a dormant virus all along. It's got 400 years plus one of pedigree. And it started before then because somebody had to plot the Atlantic slave trade before the Atlantic slave trade started. Come on, somebody. But 400 years plus, it's gone dormant at various times. But let me tell you what is not a part of the roadmap to becoming an anti-racist human being, let alone an anti-racist Christian. We must be delivered of the rhetoric where we lead with, "I'm not a racist." I told you at the annual conference, I know I have some prejudices. My grandmother said, "Tell the truth, son, and shame the devil." I can't get out of this dilemma if I won't tell the truth. I'm not talking about you're bad. I'm not talking about I'm bad. We've all got to own where we've had privilege that we think we're entitled to. We will not come out of this by saying we're not racist. Let me give you one more way. The communications office, and hasn't Kay and her team done a fabulous job? Let's give them a shout out. Let's give them a shout out. We couldn't do this without them. We have some new pen pals since we've put Dismantling Racism on the website, giving you a few videos. Let me give you one. This was precious. If you, directed to Kay, and the bishop would stop talking about it, racism would go away. Like, seriously? Come on. We're actually in the middle of some other stuff that we think if we don't talk about it, it's not real. It's real. It's as real as COVID. And so I'm saying the beginning place is not to announce yourself as, "I have no prejudices," or I love the litany of people saying, "Well, I have," and then you fill in the blank number of friends. No, it's a little harder than that. But relationships are where it does start. Community is where it starts. Collaborating together about what paradigm will dominate our life together in a local community is where it starts. And so I'm asking us, in the second place, to become those who've already committed through baptism that we want to challenge the systemic evils of our age. And here's the third ask. The third ask is that we would do the work of aligning our resources, particularly structure and also financial resources, to get the work of disciple making and the subversion of evil into the very core of our agenda as an annual conference. There are many pieces and parts to that. And we already invest enormous amounts of dollars in helping churches connect to their communities, in helping people to do work together. We have somewhere between 8 and 11 task groups going in this annual conference right now on cross-racial appointments, on anti-racism work, on the dashboard, on how do we become more connected. I mean, the litany goes on. And these are helping us to lean into these next 4 years because we're going to run through the tape, whatever the tape is. And in alignment, I'm borrowing now from the movie world and from Drumline. I'm looking for not automatons, but I am looking for, when we present to the world, one band, one sound. Are you hearing me, church? One band, one sound. Some of you were in the marching band. Others of us poorly played in orchestras. I didn't do very well. You wouldn't know that a big guy like me, I actually played the violin at one time. Don't even bring one near me. My fingers don't even fit. And I can't get my thumb in the bow. I played the bass at one time, the string bass. One band, one sound. But that sound, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, is rich with nuance, color, and contour, because all of the instruments, when they're supposed to play together, they're playing together. when they're supposed to sit out and somebody else is soloing, when the brass is up and the drums are up and the woodwinds. Are you seeing? One band, one sound. I finally want to say to you before I commission these dear women that are waiting, I'm more hopeful than ever. I don't know how we got here, but I want you to know that God or somebody has all of my attention. And God is just waiting, saying, West Ohio, won't you join me in the project of healing this world, of closing the disparity gaps, and of helping everyone to know that they are a beloved child of God. The core of our mission is unchangeable. Make disciples for the transformation of the world. You can spend time exegeting and working on the semantics of, well, do we actually make disciples? I heard the master say, go. He said, if you'll baptize and you'll teach, you might just find some disciples get made. But it won't be only by what comes out of our mouths, but it will most certainly be by the lives we live into the world. We're in the middle of a mess, and I'm more excited than ever. My sleeves are rolled up, my heart is open, and my only plea of you is, let's go together.